Welcome to this session, Logistics Education, Emerging and Developing Countries and LEAD program, as I can see here. Supply chain education in sub-Saharan Africa. And I have the pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Kreie. André is Director of Global Logistics Education with the Kreie Foundation in Switzerland, but also the Vice Dean of German Foreign Trade Logistics Academy in Bremen, Germany. At the moment in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. So it's amazing, André, to have you so far away in Africa and talking to us and have so far, let's keep our fingers crossed, a very stable internet connection as well. I would like to give the floor to you, and it's a great honor to have you here.
Okay, Karine, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to my audience. I'm not quite sure where everybody is based. I'm just 1 hour ahead here in Addis Ababa, so everything is fine. I'm in the morning here. So thanks a lot for participating in my session. As I just have limited time, I think we just kick off. Topic is supply chain logistics education, emerging developing countries. So to give you a little bit about the background, you see here on the top right hand corner the Kreie Foundation. So that is actually, 1 minute please. So that is actually my employer. Here on the right hand side you see Mr. Kreie, who is obviously associated with the company Kreie Nagel. So this is where I get our logistics and supply chain background from. His family founded a foundation a couple of years ago, so I think almost a couple of decades ago. And today we have 3 major areas. I don't know anything about medicine, about culture, but obviously I know a little bit about logistics. So our foundation has our own university in Hamburg. That's a Kreie Logistics University. We do have a humanitarian logistics program. We support different universities around the globe, and we have my program, which we call LEAD, which is Logistics Education in emerging and developing countries. So for my presentation, I looked a little bit with a focus on Africa. We do a little bit also in Central Asia as well as Southeast Asia. We have partners in the US, obviously in Europe and also in Asia, but our main focus at the moment is to work with universities, particularly on the African continent. We do have partner universities in East Africa. We do have particularly some universities in Nigeria, so that's for West Africa. And our general idea is that we strengthen the kind of education capacities with universities. So we usually focus on higher education. We also do a little bit of vocational training. But so the idea is that we get the universities up to speed and up to standard when it comes to the topic of logistics and supply chain management. So there is this, some topics are relatively specific to the theme of logistics and supply chain management. I might argue that, some of the general principles should also apply to other disciplines. Yeah? So that there's no different than that. My agenda, I quickly talk about capacity building of how we do that and what different ideas that needs to be considered. I talk about the teaching challenges we have and universities have here in general. Then I show a little bit of processes versus bottlenecks, what the limitations are here when it comes to research, and that it is important to contextualize the teaching. So, I'm going to show you what I mean with that. And then we look in how we can measure maybe success, or how universities can also measure progress to see if they have progressed on towards a more international standard degree program. So when we talk about capacity building, very reasonably, we talk about bachelor's program, master's program, PhD programs. That is the core focus we have at the moment. And that is also what obviously universities are interested in. There is a little bit of confusion sometimes about the wording of PhDs and professors, and so everybody is called professor here. Sometimes you're referred to instructors, so they sometimes refer to them as associate professors, assistant professors, but the criteria of which position you're in are completely different from what we are used to. So what we focus in each kind of degree program or even a PhD program is we look into the curricular topics. Obviously, we do a lot of train-the-trainer activities. And what is really important is that the universities here in the sub-Saharan Africa region are not necessarily not knowing what they need to do. I think it's more about opportunities they lack of. So it's not so much that we need to tell them, hey, we think you should look into ABC, or this is what you should maybe look into. I think they know sort of relatively precisely what they need to do. It's just a matter of opportunities and often a matter of funding, that they want to pursue a different avenue, that they want to increase the capacity, that they just can't do it for certain circumstances. So to give you a bit of an idea of what are the teaching challenges, that some of them we maybe think about, some of them we don't. So the first thing is countries are highly differently developed when it comes to technological use of laptops, computers, and so forth. So here in Ethiopia, where I'm at the moment, I would argue that hardly any student has a laptop. We supply the universities with some computers. I'm not quite sure if they're really used frequently. So when it comes to how do they connect to the international world, how do they start presentations or anything like that, what we see is that we really have the basics. So if you don't have a laptop, you don't practice kind of, Microsoft Office applications or any other kind of brand, of course. Yeah? So you don't calculate anything, you don't know how to use Word, and you don't have a clue about how to do a PowerPoint presentation. So this kind of idea of what we maybe have of how we should design our teaching is very difficult. Yeah. So coming back to InChange, when we do the simulations, then it's very tricky. I actually tried that last year to have the supply chain game and simulation, delivering kind of remotely. It did not work. So students were not familiar of how to use the laptop. It was kind of very challenging for us. So that is sometimes what we need to consider, that they don't really have the same IT equipment and experience as we do have. The second thing is kind of in the center at the bottom. Traditionally, we see a lot of front teaching. So when it comes to kind of train the trainer courses, we don't necessarily need to look into content, but we very often look into teaching methodology. So what kind of methods can we use in order to make the teaching much more exciting? And that, I think, is a big issue, because we have a lot of really kind of old-fashioned lecturers that are kind of reading from books, and that is not how we transfer knowledge. Yeah. So I think it's getting better, but we still have this kind of traditional kind of approach. When it comes to weather, we should sometimes not underestimate that the calendars are a little bit different. So we have here in Africa, or another sub-Saharan, in Africa, but I think also in other regions around the world, we have this kind of rainy season. We have harvest seasons where sometimes, even students at that level need to go back to the farms and to the families and need to help. We should also not kind of forget about the construction of buildings and let's say lecture halls. So we have experienced it a number of times now that we don't have this kind of typical construction like we have in Europe, or I don't know, anywhere else. What we're going to have very much flat roofs. And if it is not properly constructed, and if it rains, you can't hear yourself within the teaching room. So that means we have to suspend teaching when it rains. And that is something, okay, we didn't know, and that definitely limits also the locals to kind of deliver the full program. Another thing that we have at the moment here, Addis Ababa, as mentioned, we do have two groups. Also, I think all of them with actually a bachelor's degree, and we train them here in certain topics in Addis Ababa. None of the 50 students we collected from the countryside speaks English. So zero, nada, nothing. And actually, they don't even speak the same language. So one is from the north, one is from the kind of south, and here in Ethiopia, we're going to have about 80 different languages. So when it comes to, how do we exchange lecturers? How do we kind of build a regional network? Well, then usually the common kind of grounds should be the English language. Well, that is difficult if they don't speak it, and if also difficult if lecturers don't speak it. And then also we often face a problem of really poor infrastructure. So as you see here, I took a picture of my driver and I being stuck somewhere in Nigeria, which wasn't the nicest situation. So that happens very frequently, yeah. We're gonna have students that do not show up because their infrastructure was not, or did not allow them to come to our kind of training location, or to sometimes even go to university. So there is kind of certain patterns that we just don't have in Europe, or that we don't have in other regions of the world, and that significantly impact, let's say, the standard and let's say the schedule of how we can teach and how they teach here locally. We don't really have for some things you don't necessarily have a solution. So I can't build a bridge as Kreie Foundation. We can help a little bit with English, of course, and we definitely can help with kind of the teaching methodology, but I can't do anything about the rain. Yeah? So it's just that we have to eventually deal with it and have to adapt the kind of teaching experience and the knowledge transfer kind of significantly. We have to design it significantly different than what we are used to. Also, what sometimes is or might be of interest to think about, Africa is not at a substandard when it comes to process and let's say adhering to regulations. So sometimes we have the feeling that, oh yeah, they don't, or they do it differently than us, or it's straightforward to get in, or they bypass something. That's usually not the case. Actually, I picked one of the examples where I think they're much stricter than us in Europe, for example. So what we see here, I picked Nigeria, a country of over 200 million people. And as per today, they do not have a single bachelor's program in logistics and supply chain management. So that would be taking out all of the logistics degree programs at bachelor and master's level in Europe and kind of divided by 50%. So, 200 million is half of Europe, and we don't have a bachelor's program. That's weird. The reason is that actually they said you need to have a higher degree than the one you teach. Well, that is significantly different from at least Germany and many other countries where if you hold a bachelor's degree, you can teach in a bachelor's program. If you have a master's degree, you can do in a master's, and so forth. So in that country, you need to have a master's degree in order to teach a bachelor's program. So where do we get the master's from? You need to have a PhD in order to teach in a master's program. Okay, where do we get the PhD holders from? In this specific area. So this is where, they're gonna make it much stricter when it comes to quality assurance, because they say, look, we would like to have the experience, the advanced knowledge of the lecturer to teach an undergraduate program, but at the same time, they create a bottleneck, which they are at the moment not unable to overcome. And we try to help them with that. So generally speaking, very often what we see is that the strict adherence to quality and processes creates bottlenecks that prevent them from actually implementing degree programs. So another aspect which might not be known when it comes to, for example, research in Africa appears to be, well, in sub-Saharan Africa, appears to be quite expensive. So I just put you in one of the kind of applications with one of our supported PhD students. So he wants to have from me 17,670 euros to do his data collection for a kind of health supply chain PhD. So he does a bit of a medical, well, I don't think it's necessarily a medical study, but he wants to collect certain areas across Ethiopia. And so as you see, he needs to kind of have data collectors in certain areas. He needs to train them. They need to travel a little bit. And then, the costs go up immediately, yeah? And so I wasn't expecting that somebody requests 17,000 euros for data collection only. I don't think that any university in Europe necessarily budgets for such an amount. So, it's sometimes difficult to access the data. Again, I already mentioned the language barriers, administrative hurdles. So you need to kind of register if you want to collect data. That also costs money and time again. So that is one of the problems we face, that generally speaking, research is sometimes very expensive. We see that also for master students. They usually also get a budget, which is between $500 and $1,000 to actually complete their data collection and interview phase and all that stuff. Another topic I had, which also came up, which maybe is a little bit different from us, I don't know, is obviously the problem to publish. So that is significantly different from Europe. In sub-Saharan Africa, we have only top academics that have published. I would say the vast majority has not published in A journals, A+ or B journals. They really struggle with that and rather go with local journals. The other avenue that came up now is open access journals, but at the time that is also quite costly in my opinion. So that is a debate. I don't really have a solution or recommendation. So we are still in the finding process of what do we actually want to do about it. I mean, I can't implement an A+ journal, so that's not a solution. But at the same time, we can't pay always, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for a publication in an open access journal. So that also can't be the solution. So that is something we need to discuss, I think, over the next couple of years, months, to see if, okay, what solutions can help the academics here to publish as they should do. And then final bit, local contextualization. It's kind of a balance. Whenever we talk to African professors and academics, it's always, oh, we are special. Here in our country, it's different. Here at my university, it's different. That's of course not fully true. No university is super special. No country is really different. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we all do the same thing, and of course we can have such methods, teaching methods, as case studies, etc. I think what they also learned is that they sometimes use it as an excuse. But what is a fair point is that we need to contextualize case studies and just can't say, oh yeah, the Harvard topics, which you find in the what is it? When you access it, the pool of the case studies, that will be difficult to apply because the context is completely different here. So I picked, on the right-hand side, I picked the exported goods of Tanzania to just give an example. And I would have not expected, number one, that number two is manufactured goods. So I was not aware that Tanzania actually manufactured that much. And I wasn't expecting cashew nuts on position 4. So that is something, that needs to be considered. In which country are we in? What is the cultural, what is the, society made of, and how can we come up with own or self-developed case studies instead of just copy-pasting something from the international community. So that is, I think, what I wanted to do in my kind of 15 minutes. Just one final slide I had here is we believe it's kind of important to sort of track a little bit this kind of success measures. Measuring education is one of the key challenges. Yeah. So how does a university contribute to a specific sector? Very difficult to measure, in our opinion. What we try to do is, number one, we try to do the outputs first. So at the moment, what is crystal clear? The output number. So that means pure number of logistics graduates, pure number of PhD holders with a logistics degree, pure number of publications we have from the African and top journals is just too low. So if that is already low, whatever comes on the outcomes and on the impact can't necessarily be at great value. So we at the moment focus strongly on the outputs and try to kind of go into the discussion of how we can, then impact the outcomes and actually have a better impact on all the kind of different disciplines in which logistics plays a role. So that is, I think, my kind of 15 minutes I had. I'm not specifically on time. I'm 3 minutes over, but I hope, Ray, you're okay with that.
I think you're quite on time.
Okay.
I think we have maybe a few minutes for conversation. If anyone has any comments.
Nobody has any comments.
Nobody answered. I actually thought it was really interesting, all the limitations that you're facing at the moment. That, you know, normally you don't particularly think that when you're in the global north, for instance. So it's quite interesting that you're facing these challenges and you still managed to do the work. Whisper, my city has his hands up.
Hi, how are you? Thank you with the presentation. Maybe I just thought of giving a comment since I'm sitting in Africa, but I'm in a different region on which the presentation was based. I'm based in South Africa. Of course. Thank you. So my comment maybe is maybe a question to you is, have you also explored maybe to collaborate and engage other African universities that maybe might also be not advanced, but that can also be in a position, be a channel in trying to mitigate the challenges that we are facing? And also a comment, I'm pretty sure that there are so many academics who might not have a chance to network with you, who might also need to collaborate with you, especially in terms of the research aspect. So yeah, maybe if you can comment on the two things that I've mentioned there.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I think it's a good comment. Maybe to start with, number one, I have to generalize, right? So I'm gonna have to do the sub-Saharan kind of, you know, area, which obviously is a couple of millions, hundreds of millions people. Yeah. So, so what we did is we have some, I believe, some good universities. So we have, for example, Strathmore University in Kenya that is huge, or that I believe is quite a good standard that helps us in East Africa a little bit. We do have in Ghana, for example, KNUST University, which we feel is very comfortable when it comes to the international exposure. They do a lot of with the US. They help us a little bit there. We also make use of the network of University of Nairobi, Makerere University in Uganda, which I think has quite a good reputation because of the history also with Dar es Salaam University. So we try to come up with a bit of a regional network. We do have an annual conference on supply chain and operations and supply chain management that maybe can be shared later on. So that will be happening in July, and we try to link the academics from the different kind of countries. So we also have a bit of a collaboration, I believe, with Stellenbosch University. It's not super close, but at least from time to time we help them. They help us. So yes, we do understand that we sometimes need to build a regional network where the stronger universities need to also support a little bit the ones that are at the beginning in the development, also in logistics and supply chain management. So when it comes to the reaching out to us, well, everybody is more than welcome. As I say, we do have a number of opportunities to participate in our let's say program, and if a university is interested to work with us, yeah, just drop me an email, and then we're going to take it from there. So we are not necessarily limited to the universities we currently work with.
Okay, thank you. I think you have addressed my next question, that are you only limited in the region that of East Africa, but your comment actually has opened room for collaboration with other universities. Thank you very much. I'll contact you after the meeting.
Please.
Thanks so much, Whisper, for your comments. We have a comment from Johan. Thanks for sharing, Andre. Can relate to the challenges you've raised. And then they say students studying from African countries at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. Great. Whisper, did you have something to add?
I think it's a expired hand.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do now is move on to the next session, which will be one of our keynote speakers with Professor Dr. Wayne Weiser. And he'll be chatting about thriving, the breakthrough movement to regenerate nature, society, and the economy. So definitely a great segue into what we're all here for, making a better future for ourselves. So just make sure that you're on the Skooks, you click the into the next session and join us there. We're excited to have you there.
Sounds like
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.